to Chris Guanche and Pedro Cortez of MEHQ's new podcast, Chaos Theater. This is Dollar Relance, and I'm podcasting from my hometown in Riverside, California. Hey guys, I wanted to just say a few things. I had heard your third episode just now, and I was going to make a few comments about it. Currently, right now, I was listening to your plight of your 82% dropout rate of your download audience, and I can understand how you guys may be a little, concerned, I guess. But here's the thing: I just wanted to tell you guys that I understand your pain going for something like that. But here's the thing: I know this from experience that if you do a generalized podcast, such as, I know most of the time you guys might talk about geek or niche things, essentially. Basically, you're doing topics that have a niche market. I can understand why you guys would do that, because you guys have things that interest you, and some things that other people have never heard of, so you would try to bring that to other people. But you gotta understand that when you do a generalized podcast like that, usually your interest will never really come out to other people. Some people just don't want to listen to what they have, and usually people will jump ship. So I can understand your concerns about having a lower drop rate, but at the same time, you have to take the risk with you, in the sense that you might not attract that same audience, and people will jump shit. And it also might come down to the fact of how you might conduct the podcast, in terms of what you say and what you do and how you do it. So I understand that might come off as a little prudish on my part, but it's the reality of the situation of what you might put on the internet. So granted, I realize that's an oxymoron, especially in the context of the internet, but it's something to think about. In terms of things as Chris has once stated, that Chaos Theater is a generalized podcast, if I remember right, and I can kind of understand that, how you did that, and it seems like a good idea to go for that, but it doesn't always work out that way. Believe me, I've tried. My last podcast, Solar Radio Wave, didn't survive because it was a generalized podcast, and we tried to cover a little bit of everything. So I can understand that going for a generalized podcast might seem like a good idea, but depending on how you do it, it may not be. So I would say that if any pitfalls to avoid, well, first of all, I would say get outlines going and try and stay on top of yourselves really quickly in terms of your topic, and always keep going straight. Also, when it comes to episode 3, you guys said that you had recorded once per that day, and you were going to do it again the second time around. I realized that scheduling might be hard, especially since you guys have lives outside of the internet. But I would suggest you guys try and make sure you get away from the podcast if you fail to record something and something just badly happened to your episode or your show, because then it will allow you to calm down and get a clearer head. You guys did a good job with episode 3, but it would be better if you stepped away from the podcast, because then you'll not have so much venom for your podcast, and it comes across. So I can understand that. You might be angry, but it would probably be better if you stepped away, just so that you can get a clearer head. That way you can actually be more gentle with your own podcast, and you won't be feeling like you have to speed yourself and lose something. It still came off as a great show, but at the same time, you still have to understand you might want to step away for the overall health of your podcast, and your own health too, if you have bad psyches. In any case, in terms of your topics, I listened to your first episode, which was Earthbound, and your One Piece episode as well. And the third episode, I downloaded each one as they came out, and I thought they were pretty okay for the most part. I mean, I liked Earthbound, and I had an interest in it a while back, but at the same time, I'm not very into the other topics he talked about. Even with Earthbound, I had a thing for it a long time ago, and it just was just interesting when I looked into it. The One Piece and your one time, I think it was called the Wheels of Time, if I remember right. Also, you might want to understand that when you do something as general as you guys did, jumping from topic to topic, it's not going to work out as well as you might think. Again, I'm saying this right now. A situation like that, it's going to be a hard grind at the beginning. So don't be disheartened by the drop in downloads, okay? The best thing I can recommend is that if you could, when you're doing your topics, you might want to set your topics in arts. Simply because that way it would be a little bit more structured, and it might come off as a little bit more informative for your audiences when they come down to listen to your podcast. So you might want to set up like episode podcasts as well. So that's just my recommendation. Also, you might want to stick to one thing when it comes to your podcast at the beginning. Like, for example, I know in your third episode you talked about the fact that you're going to be covering like not Battlestar Galactica, but Babylon 5, Doctor Who, I think, was also mentioned, and a few other series as well. And you'll have a return to the Wheel of Time. And I would simply say that you might at the beginning want to start talking about anime, video games, and stuff like that, and gradually build your audience to go into something else. Like, for example, I thought starting with Earthbound and then going into One Piece, even though I have no interest in One Piece, I thought that was a good move because you stayed in one niche genre. But I think it's a little bit too early for you guys to branch off into different territory. And believe me, guys, I'm speaking from experience too. Also, I will say this: I noticed that one of you is actually doing this podcast for GarageBand. I can understand. Obviously, one of you is running the podcast show through a MacBook. So I guess I would say this much: you might want to invest in something a little bit different than GarageBand. GarageBand is very good for the MacBook. It might be a little glitchy at the beginning, but you have to learn how to work it out with it. It's sort of like when you work with Audacity. It has a lot of glitches in it. You just have to know the limitation of the software, and that's going to take time. So I would suggest just hold off on it and just keep going with it, okay? And when I say that, I mean to say is take it slowly and try and learn out the kinks, okay? It'll just take time. That's all that I can say. Also, I would have to say that having two hosts on the show, I think it's a good idea that you started out with that. That way you can work out the chemistry between you two. Because you guys know each other in real life, so I imagine that you guys have a good friendship going. I would recommend that in the future to look into getting a third permanent host on the podcast, so that you have 3 co-hosts on the show. I realize that might actually be a little bit difficult, or it might be. You guys might be a little bit more hesitant. I don't know, but I would recommend you getting a third one because of all the podcasts I've listened to, 4, 5, and 3 usually are magic numbers when it comes to recording a podcast on shows. So I would recommend that you look into getting a permanent co-host on the show. I understand that you guys were thinking into doing a permanent. Like you were going to just have guest stars here and there, left and right, sort of like a Brave and the Bold series. But I would recommend you guys getting a new co-host for the show, okay? And that's pretty much all I have to say. I will leave more feedback to you guys if I can, but that's just generally what I have at this moment. I hope you guys will take my suggestions to heart. Thank you very much. Everybody, take care.